For 32 years, I was the boring daughter who paid her bills on time while my parents fawned over my sister's chaotic charm. They called me cold, but when the bank fraud department called me during Sunday dinner, Jenna's charm looked a lot like a felony. My parents screamed that I was vindictive for reporting her, claiming I chose money over blood. They kept screaming until a judge finally asked them the one question they could not answer. Silver Ridge was the kind of town where people usually stayed put. They bought the houses they grew up in, took over their parents' businesses, and settled into a comfortable, predictable rhythm. I liked rhythm. I liked predictability. My life was a series of carefully managed spreadsheets, both literal and metaphorical. I was 32 years old, and I had spent the last decade building a fortress of stability around myself, brick by single brick. I worked as an office manager for a mid-sized logistics company near the interstate. It was not a glamorous job. It involved tracking shipments, reconciling invoices, and ensuring that drivers were paid on time and in full. Most people found it tedious. I found it soothing. Numbers did not lie. If a column did not balance, there was a reason, a specific error that could be hunted down and corrected. Life outside of the office rarely offered that kind of clarity. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October when the email finally came through. I remember the exact time. 3:45. The subject line was simple. Pre-approval letter attached. I sat in my cubicle, the hum of the photocopier droning in the background, and stared at the screen. I did not open it immediately. I savored the moment. For 5 years, I had lived in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of the previous tenant's cigar smoke. Driving a sedan with 150,000 miles on it, and eating leftovers for lunch 4 days a week, I had saved 20% for a down payment. I had an emergency fund. I had a credit score that I checked once a month with a sense of quiet pride. I clicked the attachment. There it was. A formal letter from the mortgage broker stating that Lucy Wood was pre-approved for a loan sufficient to buy a unit in Brookhaven. Brookhaven was not a mansion. It was a complex of modest condos with brick facades and manicured lawns. Just 10 minutes from my office. It was quiet. It was safe. It was mine. I printed the letter, folded it precisely into thirds, and tucked it into my purse. I did not tell my coworker, Sarah, who was currently complaining about her husband's spending habits in the break room. I did not post it on social media. I just held the secret close to my chest, a warm ember of accomplishment. That evening was mandatory family dinner night. My parents, Carol and Mark, insisted on it. It was the tax I paid for being their daughter, a weekly ritual where we pretended everything was perfect while navigating a minefield of unspoken resentments. I drove to their house, a sprawling ranch-style build that had not been updated since 1998. The driveway was empty except for my father's truck. I was on time, as always. 6 o'clock sharp. When I walked in, the television was blaring a game show, and the smell of pot roast hung heavy in the air. My mother was in the kitchen, stirring gravy with a frantic energy that usually meant my sister was late. "Hi, Mom," I said, setting my purse down on the counter. The pre-approval letter was inside, hidden behind my wallet. I had debated showing them. I wanted to see them be proud of me. I wanted my father to nod and say, "Good job." Loose, but I knew better. If I told them I was buying a condo in Brookhaven, the conversation would not be about my achievement. It would be about how I was moving 20 minutes away instead of 5. It would be about how I was too independent, too distant, abandoning the family unit. "Jenna is not here yet?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "She is running a little behind," my mother said, wiping her hands on a towel. "The kids were acting up at daycare. You know how it is." I did not know how it is. I did not have children. I did not have a chaotic life that made me 45 minutes late to everything. "She will be here," my father called from the living room. "Just relax. Lucy, you are always watching the clock." I went into the dining room to set the table. 4 places, high chair for my nephew, booster seat for my niece. I folded the napkins. I aligned the silverware. I was creating order in a space that resisted it. At 6:50, the front door burst open. It was not just an entrance, it was an invasion. My younger sister, Jenna, swept in like a hurricane, carrying 2 massive shopping bags from a high-end department store in the city. Her 2 children, 4-year-old Leo and 2-year-old Mia, trailed behind her, screaming with a mixture of delight and exhaustion. "So sorry," Jenna announced, breathless and glowing. She was 2 years younger than me, but looked 5 years younger. She had the kind of effortless charisma that made people forgive her instantly. She dropped the bags on the floor, heavy, expensive-sounding thuds, and scooped Mia up. Traffic was a nightmare, and I just had to stop and get this dress I saw in the window. My mother abandoned the gravy and rushed over, her face lighting up in a way it never did for me. "Look at you. You look exhausted. Honey, here, give me the baby. Mark, get Jenna a glass of wine." I stood by the dining table, watching. Jenna was wearing a coat that probably cost more than my car insurance for the year. She was a single mother working part-time as a receptionist at a dental office. The math never added up, but in my family, asking about the math was considered rude. "Did you go shopping?" I asked, nodding at the bags. Jenna waved a hand dismissively. "Just a few things. Retail therapy. It has been a week. Lucy, you would not understand. You have it so easy with your quiet little job and no kids." I felt a muscle in my jaw tighten. I have a job that I work hard at. "Jenna." My father walked in, handing Jenna a glass of white wine. "Don't start. Lucy," he warned, though his tone was light. "Let your sister breathe. She has a lot on her plate." We sat down to eat. The pot roast was dry, but nobody mentioned it because Jenna was regaling the table with a story about a rude customer at the dental office. My parents hung on her every word. They laughed when she mimicked the customer's voice. They shook their heads in sympathy when she described how tired she was. I ate in silence, the pre-approval letter burning a hole in my bag in the other room. "So, Lucy," my mother said during a lull in the conversation, "still driving that old car?" "It runs fine." "Mom," I said. "You are just so serious," Jenna said, picking at her potatoes. "You need to live a little, buy a new car, go on a trip. You act like you are 60 years old." "I am saving," I said quietly. "Saving for what?" my father asked. "You can't take it with you. Luce, look at your sister. She knows how to enjoy life." I looked at my sister. She was wearing a new diamond necklace I had not noticed before. She was sipping wine she had not paid for, eating food she had not cooked, surrounded by bags of clothes she likely could not afford. "I am saving for a home," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. The table went quiet for a second. "A home?" my mother asked. "You have an apartment, a condo," I corrected, "in Brookhaven." "Oh," Jenna said, her nose wrinkling slightly. "Brookhaven? That is so far. And isn't it full of retirees?" "It is quiet," I said defensively, "and it is a good investment." "Well, do not rush into anything," my father said, wiping his mouth. "You do not want to tie yourself down with a mortgage. You are single. What if you meet someone and want to move?" I felt the familiar heavy blanket of dismissal settle over me. If Jenna had announced she was buying a house, they would have thrown a parade, but my choices were always analyzed, critiqued, and found lacking in joy. I did not show them the letter. I finished my dinner, helped clean the dishes while Jenna sat on the couch checking her phone, and left as soon as politeness allowed. I drove home in the dark, the radio off. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself that I was doing this for me, not for them. I was the responsible one, the strong one, the one who did not need constant validation. I was wrong about the validation. I wanted it desperately. I just never got it. I arrived back at my apartment around 8:30. I locked the door, hung up my coat, and exhaled. The silence of my apartment was usually my sanctuary, but tonight it felt lonely. I sat down on my beige sofa and reached for my laptop, intending to look at furniture ideas for the new condo. My phone rang. It was not a number I recognized. Usually, I let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but the area code was local, and I was expecting a call from the complex manager about a parking permit. "Hello?" I answered. Is this Lucy Ann Wood? A woman's voice. Sharp, professional, unamused. Yes, this is she. Ms. Wood. This is the Fraud Prevention Department at Northern Trust Bank. We are calling regarding the delinquent status of your personal loan and the associated store credit card. I frowned, pulling the phone away from my ear to look at it. As if the device itself were malfunctioning. I do not have an account with Northern Trust. I said, I think you have the wrong number. There was a pause on the other end, followed by the clicking of a keyboard. Is your date of birth? March 12th, 1993? Yes. And is your social security number ending in 4589? My stomach dropped. The numbers were correct. Yes, I said, my voice sounding thinner than before. But I do not have a loan with you, Ms. Wood. We have a personal loan on file opened 14 months ago with a remaining balance of $12,000 and a retail credit line with a balance of $3,500. Both are currently 90 days past due. We have sent multiple notices to the address on file. If payment is not arranged immediately, we will be moving this account to legal collections. I stood up. The room felt suddenly very small. 14 months ago? $12,000? This is a mistake, I said, gripping the phone. I have one credit card. It is with Capital One. I pay it off every month. I have never banked with Northern Trust. Ms. Wood, the account was opened with your information. If you are claiming this is identity theft, you need to file a police report and send us the case number. Until then, you are responsible for this debt. She hung up. I stood in the middle of my living room, the silence now ringing in my ears like a siren. Identity theft. It happened to people on the news. It happened to people who lost their wallets in airports. It did not happen to me. I shredded my junk mail. I used complex passwords. I was careful. I opened my laptop. My hands were trembling slightly, making it hard to type. I went to the annual credit report website. I had checked it 6 months ago. Hadn't I? Or had it been a year? Time had blurred. I answered the security questions. My first car. My high school mascot. The report loaded. I scrolled past my student loans, which were paid off. I scrolled past my car loan, which was in good standing. Then I saw them. It was not just Northern Trust. There was a credit card from a clothing retailer opened 2 years ago. Balance, $2,000. Status, charge-off. There was a utility account for a cable company. Open, past due. There was a payday loan inquiry from 6 months ago. There were 5 accounts I did not recognize. Total debt, nearly $18,000. I felt like I was going to throw up. $18,000. That was my down payment. That was my condo. That was my safety. I clicked on the details for the Northern Trust loan, the one the woman had called about. I needed to see where the bills were being sent. If someone had stolen my identity, they must have used an address. My eyes scanned the screen. The address listed for the billing statement was not my apartment. It was not my parents' house. It was 402 Westfield Lane. Unit B. I froze. Westfield Lane. I knew that street. It was on the other side of town, near the old mill. It was a street of duplexes with peeling paint and overgrown yards. Jenna had lived on Westfield Lane. She had lived there 3 years ago, right after her first separation from her ex-husband, before she moved into her current place. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. 402 Westfield Lane. Unit B. No, it was a coincidence. It had to be. Maybe the person who stole my identity just happened to live in the same neighborhood. Maybe it was a clerical error. But the seed was planted. It was a cold, ugly seed, and it took root instantly. I thought back to the dinner I had just left. Jenna's new dress, the diamond necklace, the shopping bags, retail therapy. I thought back further. 2 years ago, Jenna had lost her job at the boutique. She had cried to our parents about not being able to keep the lights on. Then, a week later, she had miraculously found the money. She said her ex-husband had finally paid child support. I remembered a conversation with my mother around that same time. We were in the kitchen. Mom was complaining about how hard the electric company was to deal with. They are so unreasonable, Mom had said. Sometimes you just have to put utilities in someone else's name just to keep things on. People do what they have to do to survive. Lucy, I had ignored it then. I had thought she was talking about a neighbor or a friend. I closed the laptop. I could not look at the numbers anymore. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. My reflection in the glass looked pale, ghostly. You actually think I'd steal from you? I hadn't asked the question yet, but I could hear Jenna's voice in my head. I could hear the outrage. I could hear my father calling me paranoid. I needed to be sure. I could not accuse my sister of a felony based on an address from 3 years ago. I needed to give them a chance to explain. I needed to believe, desperately, that I was wrong. The next few days were a blur of anxiety. I went to work. I stared at spreadsheets. I did not tell anyone. I did not call the police yet. I felt paralyzed by the implication of what I had found. Every time I looked at my phone, I expected another collection agency to be on the line. Sunday came again. Dinner. I walked into my parents' house with a sense of dread so heavy it felt like physical weight. The house looked the same. The smell of roast chicken. The game show on the TV. Jenna was already there this time. She was sitting at the kitchen table, painting her nails a bright crimson. The kids were watching cartoons in the living room. "Hey, stranger," Jenna said without looking up. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't," I said. I sat down across from her. My parents were in the garden, arguing playfully about where to plant the hydrangeas. It was just me and Jenna. I watched her paint her pinky nail. The brush strokes were smooth, confident. "Jenna," I said. "Yeah? I got a weird call this week." She didn't pause. "From who?" "A bank. They said someone opened a loan in my name, and a credit card." Jenna blew on her nails. "That's weird. Probably a scam. I get those calls all the time about my car warranty." "It wasn't a scam," I said, keeping my voice even. "I checked my credit report. There are accounts." "Jenna. Real accounts with real balances. Thousands of dollars." She finally looked up. Her eyes were wide, blue, and utterly unreadable. "Well, that sucks. You should report it. Some of them were opened years ago." I said. "One of them was linked to an address on Westfield Lane." I watched her face. I watched for a twitch, a blink, a flush of guilt. For a second, there was stillness. Absolute, frozen stillness. Then, she laughed. It was a sharp, loud sound that made the kids look up from the TV. "Westfield Lane?" she asked, shaking her head. "You mean where I used to live?" "Yes," I said. She put the nail polish bottle down on the table with a click. "Wow. Okay. So, what? You think I did it?" "I didn't say that," I said, though my heart was pounding. "I'm just asking if you know anything. Did you ever, maybe use my information for something small? Like a phone line? Mom mentioned once that people do that." Jenna stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the linoleum. "Mom and Dad!" she yelled toward the back door. "Jenna! Stop!" I hissed. My parents appeared at the screen door instantly, sensing the change in frequency. "What is going on?" my mother asked, wiping dirt from her hands. "Lucy is accusing me of identity theft," Jenna shouted. She was breathing hard, her face flushing a blotchy red. "She says I stole thousands of dollars from her because of some old address on a credit report." My father stepped into the kitchen, his face darkening. "Lucy, what the hell are you talking about?" I stood up too, trying to maintain the high ground. "I am not accusing anyone. I am trying to figure out why there are $18,000 of debt in my name linked to Jenna's old apartment." "18,000?" my mother gasped. She looked at Jenna, then at me. "Lucy, you probably read it wrong. You know how complicated those reports are." I did not read it wrong. "Mom, and so you immediately blame your sister?" my father snapped. "After everything she has been through? She is a single mother." "Lucy, she struggles enough without you making up stories." "I am not making it up." I pulled my phone out. "I can show you." "I do not want to see your phone." Jenna spat. "You are always doing this. You are always trying to make me look bad because you are jealous. Jealous? I asked, incredulous. Jealous of what? Of the fact that Mom and Dad actually like me, Jenna screamed. Jenna, my mother said. But she moved to Jenna's side, wrapping an arm around her. She is just upset. Honey, Lucy, apologize to your sister. I stared at them. My mother, holding the sister who was wearing stolen diamonds. My father, glaring at me for disturbing the peace. I will not apologize. I said, someone used my social security number. That is a crime. You are being paranoid, my father said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous register he used when he wanted to end a conversation. And you are being negative. We are having a family dinner. I will not have you ruining it with these wild accusations. Wild accusations? I pointed at Jenna. She lived at the address. Dad, so maybe someone dug through her trash, Jenna yelled. Did you think of that? Maybe someone stole her mail. Why is your first instinct to attack me? Because you are the one with the shopping bags. Jenna, I shouted back. Get out, my father said. I looked at him. Excuse me? If you are going to stand there and call your sister a thief in my kitchen, you can leave. We do not treat family like that. I looked at my mother. She would not meet my eyes. She was stroking Jenna's hair. Fine, I said. I grabbed my purse. I walked out of the house. I did not look back. I drove home shaking. I was not crying. I was vibrating with a mixture of rage and terror. They had chosen, even when faced with the facts, they had chosen the lie because the lie was easier. The lie kept the family intact. Back in my apartment, I threw my purse on the floor and opened my laptop again. I was done asking nicely. I was done being the responsible one who protected everyone's feelings. I printed the full report. It was 20 pages thick. I sat on the floor with a red pen. I started circling dates. Account opened. November 12th, 3 years ago. I pulled up my old calendar on my phone. November 12th. That was the week Jenna's car was repossessed. I remembered because my father had driven her to work for a month. Suddenly, she had bought a used Honda. She said she got a loan. Account opened. July 5th, 2 years ago, July 5th. Jenna had announced she was taking the kids to Disney World. She said she had saved up tax refund money, but tax refunds come in April. Account opened. January. Last year. Jenna moved into her new duplex. She needed a deposit. I circled them all. Every single major purchase. Every crisis averted. Every sudden influx of cash in Jenna's life corresponded to a new account on my credit report. It was not a mistake. It was not a stranger digging through trash. It was a systematic, deliberate harvesting of my financial life. She had eaten my credit score to feed her lifestyle. And my parents? I thought about my father's refusal to look at the evidence. I thought about my mother's comment about putting utilities in someone else's name. They knew. Maybe they didn't know the extent. Maybe they didn't know the dollar amount. But they knew she was doing it. They knew she was using me as a crutch. And they had let her. Because it was easier than telling her no. I looked at the total at the bottom of the page. $18,422. I looked at the pre-approval letter for the condo. Lying on the table where I had left it, it was worthless now. With this debt, with these missed payments, no bank would touch me. The condo was gone. Brookhaven was gone. I sat alone in the dark, the red pen staining my fingers, and realized that the theft wasn't just about money. They had stolen my future to pay for Jenna's present, and they expected me to pay the bill. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the Silver Ridge Community Bank with a glare that forced me to squint. But the brightness did nothing to warm the cold knot in my stomach. I walked in at 9 o'clock sharp, my heels clicking on the polished tile floor, clutching a manila folder so tightly my knuckles were white. I had taken a personal day from work. It was the first unplanned absence I had taken in 4 years. I sat in a leather chair across from Mr. Henderson, a loan officer I had known vaguely since I opened my first checking account at 16. He was a kind man with silver hair and a desk cluttered with photos of his grandchildren. Today, however, he looked grave. He adjusted his glasses and looked down at the credit report I had slid across the mahogany desk. He read in silence for a long time. The only sound in the office was the hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of tellers counting cash. "Lucy," he said finally. Looking up, "This is a mess." "I know," I said, my voice steady but thin. "I did not open these accounts. Mr. Henderson, the personal loan from Northern Trust, the credit cards, none of it was me. I need to get them off my report. I am supposed to be closing on a condo next month." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I believe you," he said. "I have known your family a long time, but belief does not fix a credit score." "So what do I do?" I asked. "Do I fill out a fraud affidavit?" "I downloaded a form from the FTC website. That is a start," he said. "But for debts of this size, and with this many creditors involved, an affidavit is not going to be enough. Northern Trust is going to require a police report." I froze. "A police report? Is that absolutely necessary?" I asked. "I mean, can't we just dispute it internally? Tell them it was a mistake?" Mr. Henderson shook his head slowly. "It is not a mistake. Lucy, it is a crime. Someone used your Social Security number to obtain $18,000 in goods and cash. The banks will not just write that off because you say it wasn't you. They need an official record that a crime was committed. They need a case number." I stared at the folder in my lap. "A crime. If I file a police report," I said, choosing my words carefully, "what happens next? Do they investigate?" "They will," he said, "and the banks might press charges based on the police findings. If they find out who did it, that person could be facing felony fraud charges." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Felony fraud. Prison. I can't do that," I whispered. "Mr. Henderson looked at me with a sudden, sharp clarity. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Lucy, do you know who did this?" I looked away. I focused on a picture of a golden retriever on his desk. "I have suspicions." I said, "If you know who did it, and you don't report it, you are effectively accepting the debt." He said. His tone was not unkind, but it was firm. It was the voice of the financial world, where numbers were absolute. You have two choices. You can file the report, identify the thief, and clear your name, or you can accept that $18,000 as your own, pay it off, and wait 7 years for your credit to recover. 7 years. "And the condo?" I asked. He looked at the report again. "With a score of 580 and a debt-to-income ratio this high? No underwriter will sign off on a mortgage. The pre-approval is already void." "Lucy." The room seemed to tilt slightly. The condo was gone. The quiet life in Brookhaven was gone. "Is there no other way?" I asked, hearing the desperation in my own voice. "Can't I just close the accounts? Just stop the bleeding without bringing the police into it?" Mr. Henderson shook his head. "Identity theft is not a private dispute." He said, "It is a theft. If someone stole your car, would you ask the thief to just bring it back quietly? No, you would call the police. This is no different. In fact, it is worse. They did not just steal your money, they stole your reputation." I walked out of the bank into the bright morning light, feeling heavier than when I had entered. The choice Mr. Henderson had laid out was simple math, but the variables were human lives. If I reported it, I destroyed my sister. If I didn't, I destroyed myself. I drove home on autopilot. When I got to my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my laptop. Mr. Henderson had said the banks needed proof. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I logged into my email. I went to the search bar. I typed in the names of the creditors listed on the report. Wayfair, Best Buy, Capital One, nothing in my inbox. Then, I clicked on the spam folder. It was usually filled with offers for pills and phishing scams, automatically deleted every 30 days. But I had not cleared it recently. There it was, an email from Wayfair, dated 3 weeks ago. "Your order has shipped." I clicked it. The email was addressed to Lucy Wood, but the shipping address? 402 Westfield Lane. My heart hammered against my ribs. I searched again. I went back a year. I found an email in my trash folder, one I must have deleted without looking at. Assuming it was marketing. Welcome to your new platinum card. I opened it. It was dated 14 months ago. I scrolled down to the bottom of the email, to the fine print where they listed contact preferences. Email sent to lucy.wood88 gmail.com, alternate contact, jennabear94, yahoo.com. I stared at the screen. jennabear94. That was Jenna's email address. She had used it since high school. She hadn't even bothered to create a burner account. She had linked her own personal email to a credit card opened in my name. It was so sloppy. It was so arrogant. It was the action of someone who never expected to be caught. Or worse, someone who knew she would be caught and didn't care because she knew the victim wouldn't fight back. I grabbed my phone. I needed to hear it out loud. I dialed the customer service number for the store credit card. I navigated the automated menu, my fingers trembling as I typed in my social security number. Please hold for the next available agent. I waited 10 minutes. Finally. A human voice. Thank you for calling. My name is David. How can I help you? Hi, I said. I am calling about an account under the name Lucy Wood. I am locked out of the online access and I need to verify the contact information on file. Okay, Ms. Wood, for security, can you verify your mother's maiden name? Holloway. I said, thank you. And the last four of your social? 4589. Okay, I have the account here. What information did you need to check? Can you tell me the phone number associated with the account? I asked. I think it might be an old one. Sure. The primary number we have ending in 7742. I closed my eyes. 7742. That was Jenna's cell phone. And the email? I asked. It looks like we have jennabear94 yahoo.com listed for paperless statements. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking. That is all I needed. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. The evidence was not just a suspicion anymore. It was a fact. It was a digital fingerprint that led straight to my sister's iPhone. She had been getting the statements. She had been getting the alerts. Every time she bought something, a dress, a toy, a dinner, she saw my name on the account. And she swiped the card anyway. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a cold, hard clarity. I stood up. I went to my printer. I printed the email with her address on it. I printed the shipping confirmation. I wrote down the time and content of the call with David from the bank. I put it all into the manila folder. The folder was thick now. It felt like a weapon. I grabbed my keys. I did not call first. I knew if I called, my mother would tell me they were busy, or that Jenna was tired, or that I should come another time. I needed to catch them in the reality of their Tuesday afternoon. I drove to my parents' house. The drive was 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. I rehearsed what I would say. I would be calm. I would be logical. I would show them the papers, and they would have to see. They would have to stop protecting her. I pulled into the driveway. My father's truck was there. Jenna's car, a newer SUV that I now realized I was probably paying for, was parked on the street. I walked to the front door and opened it without knocking. I had a key. It was the house I grew up in. But stepping into the hallway, it felt like entering a courtroom. Hello? I called out. I found them in the living room. My mother was folding laundry on the sofa. My father was reading the newspaper in his recliner. Jenna was on the floor, building a block tower with Leo. The domesticity of the scene made my stomach turn. It was so normal, so innocent. Lucy? My mother looked up, surprised. You are not at work? I took a personal day. I said. I walked into the center of the room. I did not take off my coat. I held the folder against my chest. Jenna looked up. She saw my face, and her smile faltered. She put down a blue block. What is wrong? She asked. You look intense. We need to talk, I said. All of us. My mother sighed, dropping a folded towel back into the basket. Oh, Lucy, do not tell me this is about the other night. We already discussed this. We are not going to have this negativity in the house. It is not negativity. Mom, I said, it is facts. I walked over to the coffee table and cleared a space. Pushing aside a stack of magazines, I opened the folder. What is this drama now? My mother demanded. Not looking at the papers, she stood up, her hands on her hips. You just cannot let it go, can you? You have to be right. I ignored her. I laid the papers out, the credit report, the Wayfair email with the Westfield Lane address, the notes from my call with the bank confirming Jenna's email and phone number. Jenna, I said, looking directly at my sister. I need you to look at this. Jenna didn't move. She stayed on the floor, staring at the papers from a distance. Her face had gone very pale. I called the credit card company today. I said, my voice was trembling, but I forced it to be loud enough to be heard over the television. They have your email address on file. They have your phone number listed as the primary contact. I pointed to the Wayfair printout. And this order? Shipped to your old apartment. The dates match perfectly. Jenna. My father lowered his newspaper. He looked at the papers, then at Jenna. Jenna? He said. Jenna stood up slowly. She looked small. Suddenly, the confident, charismatic woman from Sunday dinner was gone. In her place was the little girl who used to break things and hide the pieces under the rug. She started, then stopped. Tell the truth. I said, please, just tell the truth. Jenna's lip quivered. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. It was a reaction I had seen 1,000 times. The defense mechanism of the favorite child. I didn't mean to hurt you, she burst out, the sob ripping through her throat. My mother gasped. Jenna covered her face with her hands. I was drowning. Lucy. After Mike left, I had nothing. The kids needed clothes. The electric bill was 3 months behind. I was going to be evicted. So you stole my identity? I asked. I didn't steal it, she wailed. I borrowed it. I knew you had good credit. I knew you wouldn't miss it. I was going to pay it back. I swear. Lucy, I was going to pay every cent back once I got on my feet. I looked at her, stunned by the delusion. You opened 5 accounts. Jenna, you have been doing this for 3 years. When exactly were you planning to tell me? When the sheriff showed up to arrest me? Stop it, my mother yelled. She rushed to Jenna, wrapping her arms around her. Jenna collapsed into her, sobbing hysterically. Can't you see she is upset? My mother hissed at me over Jenna's shaking shoulder. Look at her. She is a wreck. She is a wreck because she got caught. I said, Mom, she stole $18,000 from me. She ruined my credit. I can't buy my condo. My father stood up. He walked over to the coffee table and looked down at the papers. He picked up the Wayfair invoice. 18,000? He muttered. Yes, I said, and the bank says unless I file a police report, I am responsible for all of it. The room went silent. The only sound was Jenna's wet, gasping sobs. Police report? My mother said. The words came out like a curse. Yes, I said, it is fraud. Mom, it is a felony. You would call the police on your sister? My mother asked, her voice rising to a shriek. You would send the mother of your niece and nephew to jail? I don't want to, I cried, the frustration finally boiling over, but I have no choice. The bank won't let me dispute it without a report. There is always a choice. My father said. He dropped the paper back onto the table. He looked at me, his eyes cold and hard. We handle things inside this family. Lucy, we do not bring strangers into our business, and we certainly do not bring the police. Dad, I said, pleading, I can't pay this. I don't have $18,000 lying around. And even if I did, why should I pay for Jenna's clothes? For her trips? She needed help. My mother said, stroking Jenna's hair. She was desperate. You have no idea what it is like to be a single mother. You sit in your quiet apartment with your steady paycheck and you judge everyone. I am not judging. I am the victim here. You are overreacting. My father said, it is just money, numbers on a screen. We can figure out a payment plan. Jenna can pay you back a little each month. I laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound. A little each month? Dad, she works part-time. It would take her 20 years to pay this off. Meanwhile, my life is on hold. I can't move. I can't get a loan. I can't do anything. So your condo is more important than your sister? My father asked. He stepped closer to me. He was a big man, and he used his size to intimidate. Is that who you are, Lucy? You are the kind of person who chooses money over blood? I stepped back, feeling the wall behind me. It is not about the money. I said, it is about trust. She lied to me for 3 years. She looked me in the face at dinner on Sunday and laughed at me for asking. She was scared. My mother yelled. She was scared you would be exactly like this. Cold, unforgiving, vindictive, vindictive. The word hung in the air. I looked at Jenna. She was watching me from the safety of our mother's arms. Her eyes were red, but there was something else there. A glint of triumph. She knew she had won. She knew that, once again, her tears were more valuable currency than my facts. I am not being vindictive, I said quietly. I am trying to protect myself. Protect yourself from what? From helping your family? My father sneered. If you file that report, Lucy, you are dead to us. I mean it. No daughter of mine puts her sister in a cage. I looked at the three of them. A tableau of dysfunction. They were a closed circle, and I was on the outside, holding a folder of evidence that meant nothing to them. I reached down and picked up the folder. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Fine, I said. Fine what? My mother asked. Fine. You have made your position clear. I turned and walked toward the door. Where are you going? My father demanded. Lucy! I didn't answer. I walked out the front door and down the walkway. The air outside was cool and crisp, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat of the living room. I got into my car. I locked the doors. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, staring at the front door of the house where I had grown up. I watched the window. I saw the curtain move. They were watching me. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the seat. Memories washed over me, sharp and stinging. I was 22. I had just graduated college. I had a credit card with a $500 limit. Jenna had asked to borrow it to buy books for her classes. I gave it to her. A month later, the bill came. It was maxed out. Charges for a bar, a concert, a boutique. I forgot which card I was using, she had said. Laughing it off? My bad. Luce, my parents had told me to let it go. She is young. She is figuring things out. Don't be so stingy. I paid the bill. I was 25. My mother called me, frantic. She needed my social security number for a form for my grandfather's life insurance policy, or so she said. I gave it to her. I never saw the policy. I never asked what the form really was. It wasn't just Jenna. It was all of them. My identity, my name, my credit, my reputation, was just a community resource to them. It was a communal pot they could dip into whenever they needed to smooth over a mistake or fund a fantasy. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a utility. I looked down at the folder on the passenger seat. If you file that report, you are dead to us. My father's voice echoed in the small space of the car. I realized then that I had already lost them. I had lost them years ago. The moment I became the one who could be used. If I didn't file the report, I would be paying for their love with $18,000 in my future, and they would do it again. Next year, the year after. If I filed the report, I would lose the illusion of a family, but I would get to keep my life. I put the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I didn't look back at the house as I backed out of the driveway. I turned the car toward the downtown district, toward the police station. I was done being the responsible one who cleaned up the mess. It was time for the people who made the mess to live in it. I drove with dry eyes, the road blurring slightly not from tears, but from the speed at which I was leaving my old life behind. The phone call that finally shattered my denial came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after I had walked out of my parents' house. I was at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet of shipping manifests that refused to balance. The fluorescent lights of the office hummed with a low, headache-inducing buzz. I had not slept well in 6 days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the stack of credit card statements on my parents' coffee table. I saw my mother's face, twisted in accusation. I heard my father's voice telling me I was dead to them. When my cell phone vibrated against the laminate desktop, I jumped. It was Mike, my mortgage broker. I took a deep breath, forcing a professional calmness into my voice before answering. "Hello, Mike. I was just about to email you the updated pay stubs." There was a pause on the other end, a heavy, pregnant pause that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Lucy," Mike said. His voice was gentle, the kind of tone a doctor uses when they have to tell you the test results are malignant. "We have a problem." My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The underwriter pulled your credit this morning," he said. "It is standard procedure right before we finalize the offer letter. Lucy, your score has tanked. It dropped 60 points since the pre-approval." I gripped the edge of my desk. 60 points. "I know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "There is some fraudulent activity. I am in the process of disputing it." Mike sighed. "It is not just the score. There is a new collection activity posted yesterday. A judgment has been filed." "A judgment?" I asked. No, that is impossible. It is on the report." Mike said, "Look, I can't move forward with the pre-approval letter. With the open collections and the debt-to-income ratio where it is now, the system automatically flags you. We can't underwrite this loan." "But the condo," I said. "I am supposed to make the offer today. The seller is reviewing bids tomorrow." "I am sorry," Mike said. "Even if you clear this up, it takes 30 to 60 days for the bureaus to update. The condo is going to slip away. Lucy, we can try again in a few months. But for now, the application is dead in the water." I hung up. I sat there, in the middle of the bustling office, and felt my world shrink. The condo in Brookhaven wasn't just a purchase. It was my escape hatch. It was the physical manifestation of 10 years of discipline, of eating ramen, of driving a car that rattled on the highway. It was my proof that I was okay. And now it was gone. Stolen. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in the furthest stall. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the door and tried to breathe. It is just a condo. I told myself, it is just brick and mortar. But it wasn't. It was my life. When I got home that evening, the second blow landed. I opened my mailbox with a sense of dread that had become my new normal. Inside, amidst the grocery circulars, was a thick envelope from the county civil court. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Summons and complaint. Plaintiff. Portfolio Recovery Associates. Assignee of Quick Cash Lenders. Defendant. Lucy Ann Wood. I scanned the legalese. It was a lawsuit. A small claims suit for an unpaid personal loan of $2,500. Plus interest and legal fees. I had never taken out a loan from Quick Cash. I had never even stepped foot in a payday loan establishment. I read further. Failure to appear may result in a default judgment, which may lead to wage garnishment or seizure of assets. Wage garnishment. I worked in finance. If a garnishment order hit my payroll department, I would lose my job. Fiduciary responsibility was a clause in my employment contract. I could not manage the company's money if I could not manage my own. I sank onto the floor of my entryway, the summons crinkling in my hand. Jenna hadn't just bought clothes. She hadn't just paid bills. She had taken out high-interest predatory loans in my name and then ignored them until they went legal. She had lit a fuse, and now the bomb was exploding in my lap. I could not fix this with a repayment plan. I could not fix this by being the good sister. I made an appointment with a lawyer for the next morning. His name was Mr. Sterling. He was a consumer protection attorney with an office in a strip mall, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a vape shop. His office smelled of stale coffee and old paper, but his eyes were sharp. He listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. He looked at the credit report. He looked at the court summons. He looked at the printouts of Jenna's email address on the account. Finally, he leaned back in his creaky chair and tented his fingers. "Ms. Wood," he said, "you are in a very dangerous position." "I know," I said, That is why I'm here. Can you help me stop the lawsuit? I can represent you. Yes, he said, but you need to understand how the law works here. You are claiming identity theft. That is an affirmative defense. To prove it, you need to show that you did not authorize these charges and that you did not benefit from them. I have proof. I said, pointing to the folder, the email address, the phone number. It is all my sister. Mr. Sterling nodded slowly. That is evidence. Yes, but here is the catch. The creditors will argue that because it is a family member, and because this has been going on for 3 years without you reporting it, that you implicitly authorized it, they will argue it was a domestic arrangement that went sour. I felt a flash of anger. I didn't know about it. Ignorance is not always a defense if you should have known, he said. But more importantly, to stop this lawsuit and clear your credit, you need a police report. You need to file a sworn affidavit that a crime was committed. I hesitated. The image of my mother's tear-streaked face flashed in my mind. Is there any way to do it without pressing charges? I asked. Can't I just sue Jenna civilly? Mr. Sterling took off his glasses. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. Ms. Wood, he said, you are being sued for debt you didn't create. You are facing wage garnishment. You lost a mortgage approval. This is not a family spat. This is financial violence. He leaned forward. Let me ask you a question. If this were a stranger, if a man in another state had stolen your social security number and done this to you, would you hesitate to report him? No. I said immediately, of course not. Then why are you hesitating now? He asked. Because she is my sister, I whispered. Mr. Sterling shook his head. She ceased acting like your sister the moment she signed your name to that promissory note. He said, she made you a victim. Now you have to decide if you are going to be a volunteer. The words echoed in my head all the way home. A volunteer. Was I volunteering to be ruined? Was I volunteering to lose my job? My home? My reputation? Just so Jenna wouldn't have to face the consequences of her own actions? Just so my parents could keep pretending we were a happy, normal family? I sat in my apartment that night. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't eat. I watched the clock tick. Midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, at 3 in the morning. I realized something. My parents weren't protecting Jenna because they loved her more. They were protecting her because they were afraid of her. They were afraid of her chaos. They were afraid of her failures. And they were sacrificing me because they knew I was strong enough to take it. But I wasn't strong enough. Not for this. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I walked into the Silver Ridge Police Department. It was a sterile building with gray floors and bulletproof glass. I approached the front desk. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together to keep the officer from noticing. Can I help you? The desk sergeant asked. I need to file a report. I said, my voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from someone else. Identity theft. He handed me a clipboard with a stack of forms. Sit over there, he said. Fill it out. Be as specific as possible. I sat on a hard plastic bench. The form was standard. Name, address, date of incident. Then, the section. Suspect information. Do you have a suspect? I held the pen over the paper. The ink hovered, black and permanent. If I wrote her name, there was no going back. It became a matter of public record. It became a case number. You are dead to us. I wrote, Jenna Marie Wood. I wrote her address. I wrote her phone number. I listed the accounts. I attached the copies of the emails I had printed. When I handed the clipboard back to the sergeant, I felt a physical wave of nausea. But beneath the nausea, there was something else, a tiny, fragile thread of relief. It was done. I had told the truth. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Wood? A male voice asked. This is Detective Harris with the Silver Ridge Police Department. I am assigned to your case. Yes, I said. My heart hammered against my ribs. I have reviewed the documents you submitted, Harris said. His voice was calm, methodical. It sounded like gravel crunching under tires. I have a few follow-up questions regarding the timeline. Okay, You stated that the first account you noticed was the Northern Trust loan, correct? Yes. But looking at the credit report you attached, there are inquiries going back 36 months. Did you have any knowledge of these earlier accounts? No. I said I wasn't checking my credit. Detective Harris paused. Ms. Wood, I need to ask you this directly. Did you at any point give your sister permission to use your information? Did you give her your card? Did you co-sign for anything? No, I said. Years ago, I loaned her money, but I never gave her permission to open accounts. You never received any goods purchased with these cards? No furniture? No electronics? No. I felt a sudden, desperate urge to minimize it, to soften the blow I had dealt. Look, detective, I said, my sister, she has had a hard time. She went through a bad divorce. I don't think she did it to be malicious. She was just desperate. Detective Harris cut me off. Ms. Wood, he said, I have pulled the preliminary transaction records for the credit cards. He paused, letting the silence hang. There are charges here for a trip to Cabo San Lucas. There are charges for a high-end spa in the city. There are charges for a lease on a luxury SUV. I blinked. Cabo? Desperation usually looks like groceries and rent, Harris said dryly. This looks like lifestyle fraud. And given the sophistication, using your information but routing the contact details to herself, this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. I sat down on my office chair. Cabo. Jenna had gone to Cabo 2 years ago. She told us her friend had won a contest and invited her. We had all been so happy for her. She needs a break, my mother had said. She had paid for it with my name. We are going to move forward with the investigation. Harris said, we will be contacting the suspect for an interview. Thank you. Detective, I said numbly. The fallout was immediate. The next afternoon, I was in a meeting with my boss, reviewing the quarterly budget. The glass walls of the conference room looked out into the lobby. Suddenly, the receptionist stood up. I saw heads turn. Then I heard the screaming. Lucy, where is she? I know she's in here. My blood ran cold. The door to the lobby burst open. Jenna stood there. She was wearing a tracksuit, her hair messy, her face blotchy and wild. Jenna? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. She saw me through the glass. She didn't wait for permission. She stormed past the receptionist, pushed open the conference room door, and slammed her hands onto the table. My boss, David, looked at her, then at me, eyes wide. You called the cops? Jenna screamed. She was shaking, practically vibrating with rage. I got a call from a detective. Lucy! A detective! Jenna, we can't do this here, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my knees were knocking together. Please, leave. You are trying to put me in jail, she yelled, turning to face David, then back to me. Do you hear that? She is trying to put the mother of her niece and nephew in prison. Over money. I am trying to stop you from ruining my life, I snapped, losing my composure. You sued me. Jenna. The creditors you stiffed are suing me. I was going to pay it back, she shrieked. When? When were you going to pay back $18,000? After your next trip to Cabo? Her face faltered for a second. She knew I knew. You are a monster, she hissed. Mom and Dad were right. You are cold. You are heartless. You don't care about anyone but yourself. Jenna, please. I said, everyone is looking. Let them look, she screamed. Let them see what kind of person you are. You are vindictive. Lucy, you are jealous and you are sad, and you want everyone else to be as miserable as you are. David stood up. Ma'am, I am going to have to ask you to leave, or I will call building security. Jenna glared at him, then spat on the floor near my feet. Don't worry. I am leaving. I don't want to be near her. She stormed out, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. I looked at David. I looked at my coworkers staring through the glass. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to dissolve into the carpet. I am so sorry, I whispered. David looked at me with a mix of concern and confusion. Take the rest of the day. Lucy, go home. I drove home in a daze. I felt like I had been physically beaten. The word vindictive rang in my ears like tinnitus. I had just walked through the door of my apartment when my phone rang. Mom. I didn't want to answer. I knew what was coming, but I answered anyway. I had to face it. Hello? How could you? It wasn't a question. It was a wail. My mother was sobbing. A deep, guttural sound that tore at my heart despite everything. How could you do this to your sister? She called us. Lucy. She is terrified. She says the police want to fingerprint her. They want to book her. She committed a felony. Mom, I said, leaning against the wall for support. She is family. My father's voice boomed over the speakerphone. He was yelling. I had rarely heard him yell in my life. You don't call the cops on family. I told you what would happen. Dad, I am being sued, I said, trying to make them hear me. I am going to lose my job if I have a judgment against me. Did Jenna tell you that? Did she tell you she spent the money on vacations? She spent it on survival. My mother sobbed. She went to Cabo, I yelled back. She leased a car. That is not survival. Mom, that is stealing. You are a liar, my father said. You are making things up to justify what you have done. You are vindictive. Lucy, that is what you are. You have always been jealous of her, and now you have found a way to destroy her. I am not jealous. You are no daughter of mine, he said. No real sister would do this to her own blood. If you go through with this, if you testify against her, do not bother coming to Christmas. Do not bother calling us. You are on your own. Click. The silence that followed was absolute. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. I hugged my knees to my chest. You are on your own. It was the thing I had feared most. The thing that had kept me silent for weeks. The thing that had made me pay for Jenna's mistakes my whole life. And now it had happened. I was an orphan, not by death, but by choice. Their choice. I sat there for an hour as the sun went down, casting long shadows across my living room. I felt hollowed out. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was cold. Maybe I should have just paid the debt, taken the second job, ruined my own credit to save hers. I pulled myself up. I needed water. As I walked to the kitchen, I saw the mail on the counter. I hadn't looked at it when I came in. There was a letter from a collection agency, Medical Revenue Services. I opened it, my hands feeling like lead. It was a bill for $1,200. Date of service, 2 years ago. Provider, Silver Ridge, Urgent Care. Patient name, Lucy Wood. I frowned. I hadn't been to urgent care in 5 years. I looked at the diagnosis codes. X-ray, right radius, cast application. I froze. 2 years ago, Jenna had fallen down the stairs at her duplex. She had broken her wrist. I remembered driving her to the clinic because she said her insurance had lapsed. She had gone in alone while I waited in the car with the kids. She had come out with a cast. She told me the clinic had worked out a payment plan with her. She hadn't worked out a plan. She had walked up to the receptionist, given my name, given my social security number, and signed my signature. She had used my identity to fix her broken bones. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the trips or the clothes. She had worn my name like a second skin whenever her own became too uncomfortable. She had looked at me in the car that day, cradling her cast, and thanked me for the ride, knowing full well she had just committed fraud against the person driving her home. The guilt I had felt after the phone call with my parents evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They called me vindictive. They called me cold. But as I looked at the medical bill, I realized that what they called vindictive was actually the only thing that could save me. It was the truth. I picked up the bill and added it to the folder. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I wasn't doing this because I hated her. I was doing this because if I didn't, she would consume me whole. She would eat my life until there was nothing left but a shell with a bad credit score. I walked to the window and looked out at the night. The city lights of Silver Ridge twinkled in the distance. Somewhere out there, Detective Harris was building a file. Somewhere out there, a prosecutor was reading my statement. I was on my own, and for the first time in 32 years, that didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a start. The wheels of the justice system turn slowly, grinding down everything in their path. For weeks, I lived in a state of suspended animation. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner alone, and I waited. The silence from my family was absolute, a void where my life used to be. But the silence from the county prosecutor's office was worse. It was the silence of a storm gathering strength just over the horizon. Then, on a Tuesday in mid-November, the storm broke. I received a call from the Westfall County District Attorney's office. The woman on the phone introduced herself as the paralegal assigned to case number 49221. Ms. Wood, she said, her voice brisk and professional. We are moving forward. The district attorney has decided to pursue criminal charges against Jenna Wood for felony identity theft and fraud in the first degree. I sat down on my kitchen floor. The phone pressed to my ear. First degree? That sounded serious. That sounded like prison. Because of the aggregated amount of the theft, over $18,000, and the duration of the activity, the prosecutor feels this meets the threshold for a felony prosecution. She continued, "We are not offering a plea deal at this stage. We are going to a grand jury to secure an indictment." "What does that mean for me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It means you are the primary witness. Ms. Wood, you will be subpoenaed. You will have to testify." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. Testify. I would have to stand in a room, under oath, and point a finger at my little sister. I would have to look into her eyes and send her to jail. The weight of it was crushing. I wasn't just reporting a crime anymore. I was the instrument of her punishment. A few days later, the subpoena arrived. It was delivered by a uniformed officer at my workplace. I had to sign for it in the lobby, under the curious gaze of the receptionist. It was a humiliating ritual that made me feel like the criminal, not the victim. The subpoena ordered me to appear at the prosecutor's office for a pretrial interview. I took another half-day off work, depleting my vacation hours even further. The assistant district attorney was named Claire Monroe. She was a sharp-featured woman with a bob of steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to scan through my skin and read my credit report directly from my soul. Her office was stacked floor to ceiling with files, a monument to the endless capacity of human beings to steal from one another. "Sit down, Ms. Wood," she said, not looking up from a file. I sat. I folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. Ms. Monroe finally looked up. She studied me for a long moment. "I have reviewed the police report, the bank records, and the affidavit you provided to Detective Harris," she said. "The evidence is strong. We have IP addresses. We have the email confirmations. We have the phone recordings from the bank. From an evidentiary standpoint, this is a slam dunk." She paused, leaning back in her chair. "But evidence is only half the battle. Lucy, can I call you Lucy?" "Yes," I said. "The other half is the narrative. Lucy, and I need to warn you right now, the defense attorney your sister has retained, Mr. Calloway, is very good at narratives, and he is going to come for you, for me?" I asked. Confused, "I am the victim." Ms. Monroe smiled, but it was a grim, humorless expression. "In a domestic fraud case, the victim is always the first suspect, not for the crime, but for the motive. They are going to paint a picture, Lucy. They are going to say that you are the jealous, bitter older sister. They are going to say that you have always resented Jenna because she is the baby, because she is the favorite, because she has children and you don't." I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. That is ridiculous, is it?" Ms. Monroe asked. She pulled a piece of paper from her file. "We have already received a preliminary statement from the defense. They are claiming that you authorized these accounts. They are claiming that you gave Jenna permission to use your name because you wanted to help her, and that you only reported it now because you had a fight, or because you got cold feet about the debt. They are calling this a civil dispute gone wrong, not a crime." "I authorized it?" I repeated. Incredulous. Why would I authorize $18,000 of debt that I can't pay? "I lost my condo because of this." Ms. Monroe nodded. "I believe you," she said. "The evidence supports you." But a jury is 12 people who have their own families, their own messy dynamics. If Calloway can make them believe that you are vindictive, that you are doing this to punish your sister for some childhood grievance, he plants reasonable doubt. If you hesitate on the stand, if you look guilty, if you look like you are enjoying this, you lose. I am not enjoying this, I whispered. I hate this. Good. Ms. Monroe said, hold on to that, because it is going to get ugly. Your parents are witnesses for the defense. Lucy, you know that, right? I nodded. I knew. They are going to testify that you are difficult, she said bluntly. They are going to testify that you are rigid and unforgiving. They are going to try to destroy your credibility to save their other daughter. You need to be ready for that. I walked out of her office feeling like I had just gone 10 rounds in a boxing ring. I had expected the legal system to be a shield. Instead, it felt like a battlefield where my character was the casualty. The attacks began sooner than I expected. And they didn't happen in a courtroom. They happened on Facebook. I didn't have a Facebook account. I had deactivated it years ago to avoid the noise. But my cousin, Sarah, sent me screenshots, praying for my family today. My mother had posted, "It is so hard when people you love let bitterness harden their hearts." Some people would rather see their own flesh and blood in handcuffs than offer a little forgiveness. Jesus tells us to turn the other cheek, but some people only want revenge. Please pray for Jenna and her babies. The post had 40 likes. There were comments from my aunts, from neighbors I had known my whole life. Stay strong. Carol, the truth always comes out. So sad when money tears families apart. Jenna is a good mom. God will protect her. They were controlling the narrative, to the extended family, to the church group, to the neighborhood. I was the villain. I was the cold-hearted monster dragging a single mother to court over money. They conveniently left out the fraud. They left out the lies. They left out the fact that Jenna had stolen my future to buy herself a lifestyle she hadn't earned. I wanted to scream. I wanted to create a burner account and post the police report in the comments. I wanted to upload the credit card statements showing the trip to Cabo, but I did nothing. I knew that engaging would only prove their point. See? She is unstable. She is obsessed. So I swallowed the bile and went to work. But the war followed me there. 2. 3 days after the meeting with Miss Monroe, I was sitting at my desk when my phone rang. It was David. My manager. Lucy, can you come to my office? Bring your notepad. His voice was tight, formal. I walked into his office. Sitting next to him was the director of human resources, a woman named Karen who I had spoken to maybe twice in 5 years. Please, close the door, David said. I sat down. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Had I made a mistake on a report? Was I being laid off? Lucy, Karen began, opening a file on her lap. We received a disturbing email this morning regarding your conduct. An email? I asked. From who? It was sent anonymously to the General Ethics tip line. Karen said. She slid a printed piece of paper across the desk. I picked it up. The text was in a generic font. To the Management of Logistics, Inc. You should know that your employee, Lucy Wood, is currently involved in multiple lawsuits and is the subject of a police investigation. She is mentally unstable and obsessed with ruining people's lives. She has been harassing her own family and wasting police resources. A person like this is a liability to your company. She cannot be trusted with financial data. A concerned citizen. I stared at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. Mentally unstable. Liability. It was them. It had to be. Maybe Jenna. Maybe my mother. It used the same language they had used at the house. Obsessed. Harassing. This is a lie. I stammered, looking up at David. This is my family. They are trying to intimidate me. Intimidate you? David asked. Lucy, what is going on? We know you have been dealing with some personal issues, but a police investigation? I am the victim, I said, my voice rising. My sister stole my identity. I filed a police report against her. That is the investigation. She is trying to get me fired so I can't afford a lawyer. Karen exchanged a look with David. Lucy, Karen said gently, "We do not get involved in personal domestic disputes. However, this email raises concerns about your stability and the company's reputation. I am the victim of a felony." I repeated, fighting back tears of humiliation. "Is it company policy to fire victims of crime?" "No, of course not," Karen said, "but you can see how this looks. We have to investigate any claims sent to the ethics line." I took a deep breath. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I now carried everywhere. I pulled out the copy of the police report. I pulled out the letter from the prosecutor's office stating that Jenna was the defendant and I was the complaining witness. "Here," I said, sliding the papers over the anonymous email. "This is the truth. That email is retaliation. It is harassment." Karen read the documents. Her expression softened. She looked at David and nodded. "Okay," she said. "Thank you for clarifying. Lucy, we will disregard the email as malicious. Your job is safe." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "However," Karen added, handing the papers back, "I would suggest you try to keep this situation contained. We cannot have drama spilling into the workplace. It is distracting to the team." I walked back to my desk, my legs feeling like jelly. They had tried to get me fired. They had tried to take away my livelihood. It wasn't enough that they had ruined my credit. They wanted to ruin my career too. They wanted to leave me with nothing, so I would have no choice but to come crawling back to them. It was an act of war. The next week, I was back in the prosecutor's office. Ms. Monroe had called me in to review the discovery, the mountain of evidence the police had collected. We sat at a long conference table. Ms. Monroe had a laptop open, connected to a projector. "We have subpoenaed the records from every institution listed on your credit report," she said, "and we found something interesting, or rather, disturbing." She clicked a button. A spreadsheet appeared on the wall. It was a timeline of the fraud. "Most of these accounts were opened online," she explained, "but this one," she pointed to a line item for a utility company, "was opened over the phone." I squinted at the screen. It was an account for gas and electric service at an address on Chestnut Street. "Chestnut Street?" I asked. "I don't know anyone on Chestnut Street. That was the apartment Jenna lived in right after she left her husband the first time," Ms. Monroe said, "before she moved to Westfield Lane. This was 4 years ago. Lucy, 4 years. It went back even further than I thought. But look at the verification data," Ms. Monroe said. She zoomed in on the column. "When you open a utility account over the phone, they usually ask for a secondary contact or a reference if your credit is thin. In this case, because Lucy Wood had a fraud alert on her file from a lost wallet incident years prior. Do you remember that?" I nodded. I had lost my wallet in college. Right. So, the utility company required a verbal verification from the number on file to override the alert. She pointed to the phone number listed in the verified by column. "Do you recognize this number?" she asked. I looked at the 10 digits. 555-0199. I felt the air leave my lungs. "That is my dad's cell phone number," I whispered. Ms. Monroe nodded slowly. "Your father verified the account. Lucy," he spoke to the representative, "we have the call log notes." The agent wrote, "Spoke to father, Mark Wood. Verified daughter Lucy's identity and authorized service activation." I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. He knew. He didn't just know. He helped. He had gotten on the phone, pretended to be verifying my identity, and authorized Jenna to use my name. He had actively participated in the fraud. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Ms. Monroe sighed. "It fits the pattern. Lucy, Jenna had no credit. She needed lights and heat. Your parents didn't want to put it in their name because maybe their credit is stretched too, or they didn't want the liability, so they used the responsible daughter. They used the resource they had available. You." I felt sick, physically sick. All those times my father had looked me in the eye and told me I was crazy. All those times he had called me paranoid. He had been lying. He had been lying for 4 years. He had sold me out for an electric bill. Does this mean... I swallowed hard. Does this mean you are going to charge him too? Ms. Monroe looked at me carefully. We could, she said, technically, it is conspiracy to commit fraud, but usually, in these family cases, we focus on the primary beneficiary. Jenna is the one who used the services. Jenna is the one who opened the credit cards. Your father is complicit, but if we charge him, it complicates the case. It makes it look like a witch hunt. She paused. However, this is powerful leverage. Lucy, if they testify that they knew nothing about it, we can impeach them with this. We can prove they are lying on the stand. I drove to my parents' house that evening. I didn't call first. I didn't care about their rules anymore. I carried the printout of the spreadsheet in my hand like a loaded gun. My father answered the door. He looked tired. He looked older. When he saw me, his face hardened. You have a lot of nerve showing up here, he said. We told you, you are not welcome. I pushed past him into the hallway. We need to talk. Dad. Now. My mother came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes were red and swollen. Get out! Lucy! She screamed. Get out of my house! You have caused enough pain. I held up the paper. I was at the prosecutor's office today, I said, my voice steady and cold. We looked at the utility records from 4 years ago. The apartment on Chestnut Street. My father's face went pale. He stopped moving. You know, the one where you called the power company and verified my identity so Jenna could open an account in my name? I asked. Silence. The kind of silence that screams. My mother looked at my father. Mark, my father stammered. I didn't know it was fraud. They needed a reference. You verified my identity, I shouted. You told them you were my father and that it was okay to open the account. You knew it wasn't me. You knew Jenna was sitting right there. He slumped against the wall. It was winter. Lucy, he yelled back, his defense crumbling into desperation. The kids were freezing. Jenna had no heat. They were going to shut it off. What was I supposed to do? Let my grandchildren freeze? So you stole from me? I asked. You stole my name? Why didn't you use your own name? Dad? Because, he looked down. Because I owed the power company money from the shop. They wouldn't let me open a new line. I stared at him, the great patriarch, the man who lectured me about responsibility. He was just as broke and desperate as Jenna. And instead of fixing it, he had cannibalized his own daughter. And you? Mom? I turned to her. Did you know? She crossed her arms, defensive now. We do what we have to do for family, she snapped. It is normal for families to share information, to help each other. You are making a federal case out of a utility bill. It is not just a utility bill, I screamed. It is $18,000. It is my home. It is my life. I took a deep breath. I needed to calm down. I needed to be the rational one, the one who fixed things. Even now. I looked at them. They were pathetic, broken, lying, and pathetic. I have a proposition, I said. They looked at me, wary. I can't stop the charges. I said, the prosecutor is moving forward, but I can influence the sentencing. I can ask for leniency. What do you want? My father asked, his eyes narrowing. I want Jenna to sign a confession. I said, a full written admission that she opened all the accounts without my knowledge. Never, my mother cried. You want to send her to prison. Listen to me, I snapped. If she confesses, and if she agrees to a court-ordered repayment plan, and if you two agree to help her pay it, I will go to the prosecutor. I will tell them that the family has reached a resolution. I will beg them to reduce the charges to a misdemeanor. I will ask for a diversion program so she doesn't do jail time. She will have probation. She will have to pay me back, but she won't go to prison. It was a lifeline. It was more than they deserved. It was me, once again, trying to clean up their mess to save them from the worst consequences. Jenna walked into the room. She had been listening from the top of the stairs. She walked down slowly, her hand on the banister. You want me to confess? She asked. Yes, I said, It is the only way. Jenna, the evidence is overwhelming. If you go to trial, they will convict you, and with the amount you stole, you will go to jail. This is your only chance. Jenna looked at our parents. Then she looked at me. Her lip curled into a sneer. You are blackmailing us. She said. What? I asked. You are holding prison over my head to get your money. She said. You are blackmailing your own sister. I am trying to save you. I yelled. No, you are trying to humiliate me. She screamed. You want me to sign a paper saying I'm a criminal? You want me to pay you for the rest of my life? You want to own me. Lucy. I turned to my father. Dad, tell her. Tell her this is the only way. My father looked at me with pure hatred. She is right, he said. You are trying to control us. You have always used money to control people. Lucy, you think because you have a job and a savings account that you are better than us? I don't think I am better. I just don't steal. You are doing this because you are jealous. My mother spat. You have always been jealous that Jenna was the favorite. You have always hated that we loved her more, and now you are using the law to punish her for it. I stood there, stunned. There it was. The truth. They admitted it. We loved her more. They weren't denying the crime anymore. They were justifying it. They were saying that my punishment, the theft of my identity, was the natural consequence of being the unloved child, and my attempt to seek justice was just proof of my bitterness. Ms. Monroe was right. This was exactly what the defense would argue. And my parents had just rehearsed their testimony right in front of me. Fine, I said. My voice was quiet now. Dead calm. Fine what? Jenna taunted. Fine, no deal. I put the spreadsheet back in my bag. I offered you a way out. I said, I offered you mercy, but you don't want mercy. You want immunity. You want to be able to use me and throw me away and have me thank you for it. I walked to the door. I will see you in court. I said, and you won't see me as your daughter or your sister. You will see me as the witness for the prosecution. And I will tell them everything. I will tell them about the phone call. Dad, I will tell them about the electric bill. I will tell them everything. You wouldn't, my father said. His voice wavered for the first time. Watch me, I said. I slammed the door behind me. I walked to my car in the dark. My hands were shaking. But not from fear, from adrenaline, from the sheer, unadulterated power of finally knowing where I stood. I had walked into that house looking for a compromise. I walked out with a declaration of war. They had confirmed my worst fear, that I was unloved. But in doing so, they had liberated me. I didn't have to protect them anymore. I didn't have to save them. I just had to tell the truth. I got into my car and dialed Ms. Monroe's number. Even though it was late, I got her voicemail. Claire, I said, this is Lucy Wood. I am ready for the trial. And I have more information about my father's involvement. Let's add him to the witness list. I hung up and drove away. The condo in Brookhaven was gone. My credit was ruined. My family was dead to me. But as I drove under the streetlights of Silveridge, I realized something. I was free. The week before the trial was a blur of gray fog and sharp, jagged panic. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. When I did manage to drift off, my mind immediately constructed elaborate, terrifying scenarios. In one recurring nightmare, I was standing in a cold, concrete room. Jenna was there, wearing an orange jumpsuit that was too big for her. She was rattling the bars of a cage, screaming my name, Lucy, help me. It is dark in here. I would try to reach for her, but my hands were tied behind my back with red tape. Then, my parents would appear from the shadows. They weren't looking at Jenna. They were looking at me. Their faces were twisted into masks of pure hatred. You did this, my mother would hiss. You put her in the cage. I would wake up gasping, my sheets soaked in sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The guilt was a physical weight. It sat on my chest, pressing down until I couldn't breathe. Was I doing the right thing? Was I really going to send my sister to prison over money? The voice of my father echoed in my head, over and over. No real sister would do this to her own blood. On Thursday night, 3 days before the hearing, I picked up the phone. I dialed Claire Monroe's office number. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was going to tell her I couldn't do it. I was going to tell her I wanted to drop the charges, to sign a non-prosecution affidavit, to take the debt and the ruin and the shame just to make the nightmares stop. I was a coward. I was ready to fold. Then, I heard the mail slot clatter. I walked to the door, the phone still in my hand. On the floor lay a single envelope. It was from the law offices representing the collection agency suing me for the quick cash loan. I tore it open. Notice of intent to levy. I read the words, but they didn't make sense at first. I read them again. Pursuant to the default judgment proceedings, unless payment of $2,840 is received within 48 hours, we will proceed with a levy on your bank assets. They were going to drain my bank account, the checking account I used to pay my rent, the savings account where I kept my meager emergency fund. I looked at the date. The 48 hours were up tomorrow. The panic in my chest shifted. It hardened. It turned from a nebulous, guilty fear into a cold, sharp survival instinct. If I dropped the charges, this didn't go away. If I dropped the charges, I accepted this debt. I accepted the levy. I accepted that I would be evicted from my apartment because I couldn't pay rent. I accepted that I would be destitute. My family wasn't offering to pay this. Jenna wasn't offering to sell her designer clothes to stop the levy. My father wasn't offering to dip into his retirement to save my checking account. They were letting me drown. I looked at the phone in my hand. I deleted the number for the prosecutor's office. I threw the letter on the counter. I wasn't the one putting Jenna in a cage. She had built the cage herself, bar by bar, every time she signed my name, and she had tried to lock me in with her. I didn't sleep that night either, but the nightmares were gone. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, rehearsing my testimony until the sun came up. The morning of the hearing was overcast, the sky a bruised purple that threatened rain. I drove to the Westfall County Courthouse alone. My car, the trusty sedan my mother had mocked, rattled over the potholes. I parked in the public garage and walked toward the entrance. The courthouse was a massive, brutalist structure of concrete and glass, designed to intimidate. It worked. I felt small. I felt like a child who had been sent to the principal's office. Only the principal had the power to take away my freedom. I went through the metal detectors. I took off my shoes. I put my purse on the belt. I walked through the scanner. I took the elevator to the third floor, courtroom 3B. As I turned the corner into the long, fluorescent-lit hallway, I saw them. They were a cluster of familiar shapes at the far end of the corridor. My father, in his Sunday suit that was slightly too tight across the shoulders. My mother, wearing a dark blue dress and clutching her purse with both hands. And Jenna. Jenna was wearing a cardigan and a modest skirt. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a low, severe ponytail. She looked young, vulnerable. She looked nothing like the woman who had screamed at me in my office lobby, or the woman who had leased a luxury SUV to drive to the mall. She was playing a role. My mother was whispering to her, stroking her arm. My father stood guard, his back to the wall, scanning the hallway. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. He didn't wave. He didn't nod. He leaned down and whispered something to my mother. My mother looked up. Her face was a mask of tragedy. She looked at me, then pointedly looked away, turning her body to shield Jenna from my view. The message was clear. You are the danger. You are the enemy. I felt a sting of tears in my eyes, hot and sudden. I wanted to run to them. I wanted to explain. I wanted to be part of the circle. But the circle was closed. I walked to a bench on the opposite side of the hallway and sat down. I opened my folder. I pretended to read my notes. I could feel their eyes on me, heavy and cold. I could hear their whispers, a low, sibilant hiss that sounded like static. Ms. Wood? I looked up. It was Claire Monroe. She looked formidable in a charcoal suit, holding a rolling briefcase. Are you ready? She asked. I stood up. My legs felt like jelly. No, I said honestly. Claire nodded. That is normal. Just tell the truth. Look at the jury when you answer. Don't look at your family. They are not here to help you. She opened the heavy wooden doors, and we walked in. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. There was a gallery with wooden benches, a jury box to the left. The judge's bench, high and imposing, dominated the room. I sat in the front row behind the prosecutor's table. I heard the doors open behind me. I heard the shuffle of feet. I didn't turn around, but I knew my parents were taking their seats in the row behind the defense table. They were literally physically aligning themselves against me. All rise. Judge Reynolds entered. He was an older man with a receding hairline and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He sat down and adjusted his glasses. Criminal case number 49221. The State versus Jenna Marie Wood. The formalities began. The jury selection had happened the day before. I hadn't been there for that. The 12 jurors filed in. They looked like ordinary people, a teacher, a mechanic, a grandmother. They looked at Jenna. They looked at me. Opening statements. Claire Monroe was surgical. She laid out the numbers. $18,000, 3 years, 5 accounts. She promised the jury she would show a pattern of calculated deceit. Then Mr. Calloway, Jenna's attorney, stood up. He was a smooth man with a voice like warm syrup. He smiled at the jury. He talked about family. He talked about misunderstandings. He talked about a troubled sister who was using the court to settle a personal score. He was talking about me. State calls Lucy Wood to the stand. I stood up. The walk to the witness stand felt like walking through water. I swore to tell the truth. I sat down. The chair was hard. Claire Monroe approached the podium. Ms. Wood, please state your name and occupation for the record. Lucy Ann Wood. I am an office manager at a logistics firm. Ms. Wood, do you recognize the defendant? Yes. I said. I looked at Jenna. She was staring at her hands, clutching a tissue. She sniffled audibly. She is my sister. I said. Claire walked me through the timeline. It was a relief to talk about facts I could handle. When did you first become aware of the debt? October 24th. I received a call from Northern Trust. Did you open that account? No. Did you receive the $12,000 from that loan? No. Claire projected the credit report onto the screen. She went through each item, the credit cards, the store accounts, the utility bills. Tell the jury about the impact this has had on your life, Claire said softly. I took a deep breath. I gripped the railing of the witness box. I was in the process of buying a home. I said, a condo in Brookhaven. It was something I had been saving for since I was 22. I had the down payment. I had the pre-approval. And what happened? The underwriter pulled my credit a week before the offer. I said, my score had dropped 60 points because of the defaults. The approval was rescinded. I lost the condo. I felt my voice crack. I bit my lip. Don't cry. I told myself, do not cry. Anything else? Claire asked. I am currently being sued. I said, one of the lenders filed a civil suit against me. I am facing wage garnishment. I work in finance. If I have a judgment against me, I could lose my job. I have had to hire an attorney to defend myself against debts I didn't create. I looked at the jury. A woman in the front row was nodding slightly. She looked sympathetic. Thank you. Ms. Wood. Claire sat down. Mr. Calloway stood up. He didn't button his jacket. He walked toward me casually, as if we were meeting for coffee. Good morning. Ms. Wood, he said. Good morning. You seem very organized. Ms. Wood, he said, you have all your dates memorized. You have your spreadsheets. You are a very responsible person, aren't you? I try to be. I said, in fact, you have always been the responsible one in the family, haven't you? Even as a child? I suppose. And Jenna? He gestured to my sister. She was the wild one? The one who made mistakes? She has always been more spontaneous, I said, choosing my words carefully. Spontaneous. Calloway repeated. And that bothered you, didn't it? No, I said. Really? You never felt that your parents indulged her? You never felt that she got away with things that you would have been punished for? Objection. Claire called out, relevance. It goes to bias. Your Honor, Calloway said smoothly. Overruled. Judge Reynolds said, answer the question. I felt a flush of heat. Sometimes. I said, it is a normal sibling dynamic. Is it normal to report your sister for a felony without asking her about it first? Calloway asked sharply. I did ask her. I said, I asked her at dinner. She laughed at me. She laughed because the idea seemed absurd to her. Calloway said, because she thought you had an arrangement. Arrangement? I asked. There was no arrangement. Mr. Calloway leaned against the railing. Ms. Wood, have you ever loaned your sister money before? Yes, I said. Did you ever let her use your credit card? Once, I said. In college, 10 years ago. And she bought things with it? Yes. And you paid the bill? She was supposed to pay me back. I said, she never did. But you paid the bill. Calloway insisted. You didn't call the police then, did you? It was $500, I said, not $18,000. But the principle is the same, isn't it? You help your sister, you cover for her. It is a pattern. You give her access. She spends. You pay. You complain. But you do it. No, I said, that is not the pattern. Isn't it possible, Ms. Wood, that you told Jenna she could use your name to get the utilities turned on for her children? That you told her she could use your credit to get back on her feet? And then, when the bill got too high, or when you wanted to buy your condo, you panicked? You regretted your generosity, so you decided to call it fraud? No, I said, my voice rising. I never told her that. I didn't know about the utilities until 2 weeks ago. So you say, Calloway said dismissively, but you are a meticulous person. You check your credit once a month, don't you? No, I said, I check it once a year. You work in finance, but you don't check your own credit? That seems unlikely for someone so rigid. I am not rigid. I said, your parents think you are? Calloway said. He turned to the jury. They think you are controlling. They think you use money as a weapon. He looked back at me. Isn't that what you are doing right now, Ms. Wood? You are using the legal system to control your sister, to punish her, to finally be the one in charge. I looked at him. I looked at the jury. They were shifting. The sympathetic woman was now frowning. The narrative was taking root. Maybe I was just a bitter older sister. Maybe I had said yes and then changed my mind. I'm not trying to control anyone. I said, my voice shaking, I am trying not to go bankrupt. Mr. Calloway smiled. No further questions. I stepped down from the stand. My legs were trembling so hard I almost tripped. I walked back to my seat. I felt dirty. I felt like I had been stripped naked and examined for flaws. Next, the defense called their witnesses. Call Carol Wood to the stand. My mother walked up. She looked frail. She looked like a saint. Mr. Calloway guided her gently. Mrs. Wood, tell us about your daughters. My mother took a tissue from her sleeve and dabbed her eyes. They are both good girls, she said, but they are very different. Jenna has always been. She has a big heart. She trusts people. She makes mistakes, but she never means to hurt anyone. And Lucy? My mother looked at me. Her eyes were cold stones. Lucy is difficult, she said. She has always been very serious, very focused on money. She keeps score. If she gives you a birthday present, she remembers exactly how much it cost. I flinched. It wasn't true, but hearing it from her mouth made it feel true. Did you ever see Lucy help Jenna financially? Calloway asked. Oh, yes, my mother said. Many times. Lucy would complain about it, but she would do it. It was their dynamic. Lucy liked to be the savior. She liked to have Jenna owe her. The words twisted the knife. Mrs. Wood, do you believe Jenna stole this money? No. My mother sobbed. Absolutely not. Jenna told me Lucy said it was okay. She said Lucy was helping her get the apartment set up. Jenna would never steal. She loves her sister. And how has Lucy reacted to this situation? She has been vindictive, my mother said. She choked on the word. She won't talk to us. She won't listen to reason. She just wants to see Jenna suffer. I think she has been waiting for a chance to do this, to hurt Jenna. Vindictive. There it was again. Thank you. Mrs. Wood. Claire Monroe stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Wood, she said, you say Jenna would never steal? Yes. Are you aware that Jenna used your husband's phone number to verify the fraudulent utility account? My mother hesitated. I heard about that. Did you know about it at the time? No. So Jenna used her father's number without his permission? Or did he give it to her? My mother looked at my father in the gallery. He was staring straight ahead. I don't know, she whispered. If he gave it to her, he was helping her commit fraud. Wasn't he? Objection. Calloway shouted. Calls for a legal conclusion. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said. But he was leaning forward now. He was looking at my mother with a sharp, piercing gaze. Mrs. Wood, Claire continued, you say Lucy likes to keep score. Did Lucy ever ask you to pay back the money Jenna took? She demanded we pay it. Yes. And did you? We couldn't. It was too much. So Lucy was left with the debt? My mother wrung her hands. It is a family matter. We would have worked it out. By letting Lucy lose her condo? Claire asked. My mother's face hardened. A condo is just a building. Jenna is her sister. She should have forgiven her. Forgiveness doesn't pay the bank. Mrs. Wood, Claire said. She sat down. Next, my father, Mark Wood. He walked to the stand with a heavy, angry gait. He swore the oath. Mr. Wood, Calloway asked, how would you describe Lucy's relationship with Jenna? Strained, my father said. His voice was deep and rumbling. Lucy has always been jealous. Since they were kids. She couldn't stand that Jenna was happier. That Jenna had friends. Lucy was always in her room, studying, saving her pennies. She resented Jenna. And do you believe Lucy authorized these accounts? I do, my father said firmly. I heard them talking about it. I gasped. It was a lie. A flat-out perjury lie. You heard them? Calloway asked, looking pleased. Yes, a few years ago. In the kitchen, Lucy told Jenna. I can help you with the credit stuff, but you have to pay me back. I heard it. He looked at me. His eyes dared me to call him a liar. And now? Calloway asked. Now she is reneging, my father said. She got mad about something. Maybe Jenna didn't pay fast enough, and she decided to blow it all up. She is doing this to control us. She thinks because she has the money. She calls the shots. I sank down in my seat. I felt like I was disappearing. I was 6 years old again, standing in the kitchen, listening to them tell me I was too loud, too quiet, too selfish, too smart. They were rewriting reality, and they were doing it under oath. I looked at the jury. They looked confused. Who to believe? The parents? Parents don't usually lie to destroy their own child, do they? So I must be the monster. I must be the vindictive, controlling shrew they described. Mr. Calloway sat down, looking triumphant. Claire Monroe stood up. She walked to the podium slowly. She picked up a piece of paper. Mr. Wood, she said, you testified that you heard Lucy authorize the use of her credit? Yes. When was this? 3, maybe 4 years ago. And you are sure about that? Absolutely. Mr. Wood, do you recognize this phone number? Claire pointed to the screen. The number from the utility company log. Yes, that is my cell number. And do you recall speaking to a representative from Silver Ridge Gas and Electric on November 12th, 4 years ago? My father shifted in his chair. I talked to a lot of people. We have the call log. Mr. Wood, Claire said. She held up a transcript. The representative noted that a male voice identified himself as Mark Wood and verified the identity of Lucy Wood to open a new account. My father stayed silent. Did you pretend to be verifying Lucy's identity? Claire asked. I was helping my daughter. Which daughter? Claire asked sharply. Jenna or Lucy? Jenna. my father snapped. She had no heat. So you knew the account was being opened in Lucy's name? Yes. Did Lucy know? My father paused. The trap had snapped shut. If he said yes, he had to explain why he needed to verify her identity if she was the one opening it. If he said no, he admitted to conspiracy. I assumed she knew. He mumbled. You assumed? Claire asked. But you just testified that you heard her authorize it in the kitchen. If she authorized it, why did you have to impersonate a reference to get it approved? Why couldn't Lucy just call herself? My father opened his mouth, then closed it. His face turned a mottled red. And this credit card, Claire continued, clicking to the next slide, the one used to lease the SUV. The application lists your home address as the billing address. Did you receive the bills? I don't check the mail every day. Mr. Wood, bills came to your house in Lucy's name for 2 years. Are you telling this jury you never saw a single envelope from Chase Bank addressed to Lucy Wood? My father glared at her. I mind my own business. Or did you see them and give them to Jenna? I might have put them on the counter. So you knew Jenna was receiving mail in Lucy's name? I didn't think about it. You didn't think about the fact that your unemployed daughter was driving a brand new SUV and getting mail in her sister's name? Objection! Calloway yelled. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said. But he wasn't looking at Calloway. He was looking at my father. The judge's face had changed. The granite expression had cracked. He looked disgusted. He leaned over the bench. Mr. Wood, the judge said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to the back of the room. You just testified that you heard Lucy authorize this. But your actions, verifying the account yourself, hiding the mail, suggest that you knew exactly what was happening and you helped conceal it. My father looked at the judge, stunned. I was protecting my family, he said weakly. Judge Reynolds stared at him for a long, uncomfortable moment. Which part of your family, Mr. Wood? The courtroom was silent. The jury was no longer looking at me with suspicion. They were looking at my father with open mouths. I felt a sudden, strange sensation in my chest. It was the feeling of a weight lifting. The script was breaking. The story they had told about me, the story they had told me about myself for 30 years, was falling apart under the harsh light of the law. They weren't the benevolent protectors dealing with a difficult child. They were accomplices. Claire Monroe looked at the jury. She didn't need to ask another question. She let the silence hang there, thick and heavy. No further questions. She said, My father stood up. He looked at the jury, then at me. For the first time in my life, I didn't look down. I met his gaze. He looked away first. He walked back to the gallery. But he didn't walk with the same swagger. He looked smaller. He looked like a man who had just realized that his authority did not extend to the witness stand. I took a deep breath. My hands stopped shaking. The truth was out, and it wasn't my version or their version anymore. It was just the truth. The courtroom air had become stifling, thick with the scent of floor wax and nervous sweat. My father was still on the stand, though he looked less like a witness now and more like a trapped animal. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes darting to Mr. Calloway, begging for an objection that would stop the bleeding. But Mr. Calloway sat stone-faced, shuffling papers. He knew a sinking ship when he saw one. Claire Monroe walked back to her table and picked up a new stack of documents. She moved with a slow, predatory grace. She wasn't done. Mr. Wood, she said, turning back to my father, I want to go back to the mail. You stated earlier that you might have put bills addressed to Lucy on the counter. You stated you didn't think about it. My father cleared his throat. I am a busy man. I don't micromanage the mail. Is it true that you also received phone calls? Claire asked. Collection calls? I get a lot of spam calls, my father said dismissively. Everyone does. Claire held up a call log. This is a record from Quick Cash Lenders, she said. They logged 5 calls to your home line in the month of December last year. The notes say they spoke to a man who identified himself as Lucy's father. The notes say this man told them to stop calling or he would sue them for harassment. My father's face flushed a deep, angry red. Did you take those calls, Mr. Wood? They were calling at dinner time, he snapped. They were rude. So you knew debt collectors were chasing Lucy? Claire said. You knew they were calling your house, and instead of asking Lucy about it, instead of asking Jenna why collectors were calling for her sister, you just threatened them? I was protecting the peace of my home. You were protecting the secret, Claire corrected. You knew that if Lucy found out about the calls, the game would be over. I didn't know it was fraud. I just thought— What? Claire interrupted, her voice sharp as a whip crack. What did you think, Mr. Wood? That Lucy, the daughter you claim is so financially controlling, the daughter who saves every penny, had secretly taken out a payday loan and given your home number as a contact? Did that sound like Lucy to you? My father opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Or did it sound like Jenna? My father looked down at his hands. Maybe once or twice. Something didn't seem right. He mumbled, A bill looked odd. And what did you do? I asked Jenna. He said softly. And what did she say? She said she was handling it. She said it was a mix-up. She said Lucy knew about it and I shouldn't worry. And you believed her? I wanted to believe her, because it was easier, Claire said. Because if you believed her, you didn't have to confront the fact that your favorite daughter was a thief. Objection, Calloway shouted. Withdrawn, Claire said calmly. She didn't need the question. The jury had heard the answer in my father's silence. But she wasn't finished. She walked back to the projector. Mr. Wood, we have talked about what Jenna took. We have talked about the credit cards, the loans, the utilities. But during our investigation into the family finances, we found something else. Something that suggests this pattern of using Lucy's identity didn't start with Jenna. I sat up straighter in my chair. What was she talking about? Claire placed a document on the projector. It was a standard tax form, a 1040 form. Do you recognize this tax return? Mr. Wood? Claire asked. It is your joint filing from 3 years ago. My father squinted at the screen. Yes, that is my tax return. Can you read the line under dependents? My father hesitated. It lists Jenna Wood, and Leo Wood, and who else? He swallowed hard. Lucy Wood. Claire zoomed in on the image. Lucy Wood. She read aloud. 3 years ago, Mr. Wood. Lucy was 29 years old. She was living in her own apartment. She was working full-time at Logistics Incorporated. She paid her own rent. She paid her own taxes. Claire turned to look at him. Why did you claim her as a dependent? My father pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his forehead. We paid for her car insurance that year, he said, and we bought her some furniture. You paid her car insurance? Claire asked. That was, what, $1,000? Around that. And did you provide more than 50% of her financial support? Which is the legal requirement to claim an adult child? My father shifted. Well, support is complicated. We gave her emotional support. We were her safety net. Mr. Wood, Claire said, her voice dropping an octave. You claimed a 29-year-old gainfully employed woman as a dependent to reduce your tax liability. You used her social security number to get a bigger refund. Did you tell Lucy you were doing this? No, he whispered. Did you offer to share the refund with her? No. So, Claire said, turning to the jury, it wasn't just Jenna. It was the culture of this family. Lucy's identity was a community asset. Her name, her credit, her social security number, it all belonged to you. You felt entitled to use it whenever you needed a little extra cash, didn't you? I felt the blood drain from my face. I stared at the back of my father's head. 3 years ago. I remembered that year. I had struggled to pay my student loans. I had eaten rice and beans for months, and all the while, my parents were shaving thousands off their tax bill by claiming they were supporting me. They hadn't just enabled Jenna. They were the original architects. They had taught her that I was a resource to be harvested. The murmur in the gallery was audible now. It wasn't just a ripple. It was a wave of shock. The jurors were whispering to each other. The narrative of the good family trying to manage a difficult daughter had completely collapsed. Now, they saw a pack of wolves feeding on the one sheep that had strayed from the den. No further questions. Claire said, "My father stumbled off the stand. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at my mother. He looked like a man whose entire world had just dissolved. The defense attorney, Mr. Calloway, looked defeated. He stood up slowly. Defense calls Jenna Wood. Jenna rose from her seat. She looked tiny. She walked to the witness stand with her head down, clutching her cardigan around her as if she were freezing. She sat down and whispered the oath. Jenna, Mr. Calloway said gently, you have heard the testimony. You have seen the evidence. I want to ask you one question. Did you intend to steal from your sister? Jenna looked up. Her eyes were swimming with tears. No, she sobbed. No, never. I love Lucy. Then why did you do it? Calloway asked. Why did you open the accounts? Because I was drowning, Jenna wailed. The sound was raw, piercing the sterile quiet of the courtroom. Mike had left me. He took the bank account. He took everything. I had 2 babies and no diapers. I had an eviction notice on my door. I was so scared. She took a ragged breath. I didn't want to hurt her. I needed a bridge. Just until I got a job. Just until I got on my feet. I thought Lucy would be fine. Why did you think she would be fine? Calloway asked. Because she is Lucy, Jenna cried. She is always fine. She is the responsible one. She has savings. She has a good job. I thought, even if she found out, she has so much, and I have nothing. I thought she would understand. I thought she would want to help me. And your parents? Calloway asked. Did they tell you to stop? Jenna wiped her nose with the tissue. I told them I was in trouble, she whispered. I told Mom about the credit cards a year ago, and what did she say? She told me not to worry. She said they would handle it if anything happened. She said Lucy didn't need to know because it would just upset her. She said we would pay it back before you noticed. I stared at my sister. There it was. The confession. Not just of the crime, but of the conspiracy. My mother had known. My mother had actively orchestrated the cover-up. Lucy doesn't need to know. It would just upset her. They had managed me like a problem. They had managed the victim to protect the perpetrator. Mr. Calloway sat down. He had tried to paint Jenna as a desperate victim of circumstance, but in doing so, he had implicated the entire family unit. Claire Monroe stood up. She didn't walk to the podium. She stood by her table, looking at Jenna with a mixture of pity and resolve. Jenna, Claire said quietly, you say you thought Lucy would be fine because she is the responsible one. Yes, Jenna sniffled. Do you know why Lucy is responsible? Claire asked. Do you know how she got those savings? Jenna blinked. She is good with money. She is good with money because she doesn't spend it on trips to Cabo San Lucas. Claire said, she is good with money because she drives a 15-year-old car while you lease a luxury SUV in her name. I needed a safe car for the kids, Jenna protested. You went to a spa. Jenna, Claire said, we have the receipt. $400 for a massage and a facial. Was that for the kids? I was stressed. I needed a break. You needed a break, Claire repeated. So you stole $400 from your sister to relax. You say you love her. But you didn't treat her like a sister. You treated her like a credit union. You treated her like a thing you could use. I didn't mean it like that. And when Lucy came to you, Claire continued, her voice rising, when she came to you at dinner and asked you about the fraud, did you tell her the truth then? Did you say, I am sorry, I was desperate? Jenna looked down. No. What did you do? I laughed at her. You laughed at her. You gaslit her. You called her paranoid. You let your parents throw her out of the house. Was that love? Jenna? I was scared, Jenna screamed. I was scared of going to jail. And now you are here, Claire said. And Lucy is the one who lost her home. Lucy is the one being sued. You say you thought she would be fine. Look at her. Jenna. Claire pointed at me. Does she look fine to you? Jenna looked at me. For the first time in months, she really looked at me. She saw the dark circles under my eyes. She saw the cheap suit I was wearing because I couldn't afford a new one. She saw the person she had hollowed out. "I am sorry. Lucy," she whispered. Claire let the silence stretch. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. No further questions. Jenna stepped down. She walked back to the defense table, but she didn't look at our parents. She slumped into her chair and buried her face in her hands. The defense rested. Judge Reynolds sat high on the bench. He had been taking notes throughout the testimony, his pen scratching rhythmically against the paper. Now, he set the pen down. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had seen too much of the ugly side of human nature. He looked out over the courtroom. He looked at the jury. Then he looked at the defense table. He didn't look at Jenna. He looked past her. He looked directly at my parents, sitting in the front row of the gallery. "Mr. and Mrs. Wood," the judge said. My parents jumped slightly. They hadn't expected to be addressed. They weren't on trial. Not officially. "Please stand up," Judge Reynolds said. My father stood up slowly, helping my mother to her feet. They looked small in the vastness of the room. "I have sat on this bench for 20 years, Judge Reynolds said. His voice was quiet, but it had a resonance that reached every corner of the room. "I have seen strangers rob strangers. I have seen business partners defraud each other. I have seen greed in many forms." He paused. "But I have rarely seen a case where a family so systematically cannibalized one of their own." My mother let out a small, choked sob. "You sat there on that witness stand," the judge continued, "and you spoke about family. You spoke about loyalty. You called your daughter vindictive for trying to protect her livelihood. You claimed that family helps family." Judge Reynolds leaned forward. His eyes were hard as flint. "I want to ask you a question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Or perhaps you don't need to answer at all." The courtroom was utterly silent. Not a cough, not a rustle of fabric. Even the court reporter seemed to be holding her breath. "Mr. and Mrs. Wood," the judge said, "if someone had done to you exactly what your daughter Jenna did to Lucy, if someone had used your name, your social security number, your credit, over years, without your consent, if someone had ruined your retirement, stripped your assets, and lied to your face about it, would you stand here today asking this court to look the other way?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. My father opened his mouth. He looked like he wanted to say yes. He wanted to say, "Of course, because we are good people." But the lie died in his throat. He knew, we all knew, if a stranger had done this, if I had done this to them, they would have been the first to call the police. They would have demanded justice. They would have screamed about their rights. They had only demanded silence from me because they didn't respect me. They demanded silence because they believed I existed to serve them. My mother looked at my father. She looked for the script. She looked for the line that would save them. "It is different. She is her sister." But it wasn't different. Theft is theft. Betrayal is betrayal. My father's jaw worked, but no sound came out. He looked at the judge, then at the floor. He couldn't meet the eyes of the man who had seen right through him. My mother looked at me. For a split second, I saw the realization hit her. She saw herself through the judge's eyes. She didn't see a martyr. She saw a predator. She looked away, shame flushing her neck a mottled purple. They stood there in silence. 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The silence was louder than any screaming match we had ever had. It was the sound of their moral high ground crumbling into dust. Judge Reynolds nodded slowly. "Let the record show," he said, "that the witnesses have no answer." He sat back in his chair. "Their silence is telling," he said. "It tells me that you know exactly what this is. This is not a family dispute. This is exploitation. You have confused forgiveness with enabling. You have confused loyalty with complicity. And in doing so, you have not only harmed one daughter, but you have destroyed the other." He turned his gaze to Jenna. "You, young lady, have been taught that consequences are for other people. You have been taught that your needs justify your actions. That ends today." He looked at the jury. "The jury will retire to consider the verdict, but I will say this. When it comes time for sentencing, should there be a conviction, I will be looking very closely at the role of the entire family system in this crime." He banged the gavel. "Court is in recess." The sound of the gavel was like a gunshot. It signaled the end of something. My parents sank back onto the bench. They didn't touch each other. They sat with a foot of space between them, staring straight ahead. I stood up. Claire Monroe turned to me. She didn't smile, but she nodded. "You did good, Lucy," she said. "You told the truth." I walked out of the courtroom. I didn't wait for the verdict. I knew what it would be. The evidence was irrefutable. Jenna would be convicted. She would face probation, restitution, maybe even a short stint in county jail. She would have a felony record. Her life would be hard. But as I walked down the long hallway, past the metal detectors, and out into the cool, gray afternoon, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, aching heaviness. I had lost them, truly and completely. There would be no Christmas dinners. There would be no birthday calls. There would be no reconciliation. They would blame me for this until the day they died. In their version of the story, I would always be the villain who put her sister in jail. But then, I thought about the judge's question, "Would you stand here today asking this court to look the other way?" They couldn't answer. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my car keys. I looked at my old sedan parked in the garage. It wasn't a luxury SUV. It wasn't impressive, but it was mine. I paid for the gas. I paid for the insurance. I got in and started the engine. I was alone. I had $18,000 of debt to clear. I had a credit score to rebuild from the ashes. I had a lawsuit to settle. But for the first time in 32 years, I wasn't carrying them. I wasn't carrying their secrets. I wasn't carrying their lies. I wasn't carrying their bills. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the spot. The road ahead was long, and it was uphill. But as I drove out of the garage and into the light of the afternoon sun, I realized that the road was finally, truly mine, and that was worth everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a difficult journey for Lucy, but sometimes standing up for yourself is the hardest and most important thing you can do. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Lucy did the right thing by reporting her sister? Or do you think family should always protect family, no matter what? And let me know where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button to join the Revenge Stories community. We have many more stories of justice, drama, and hard-won redemption coming your way. Share your thoughts in English below, and I will see you in the next video.